Help us explain what is the union and why are the firefighters all coming together to make this decision?
Yeah, so the Firefighters Union, each department or members of that department have a union that's a chapter of a state union, national union. And in the case of Santa Monica, it's 113 members that make up this union. The step that occurred, and there was a long path to kind of get there, was basically a one-time assessment to explore Bitcoin, not just as an asset, but as a network, as a monetary instrument, as an innovation, and take a step to do that. And so what occurred was a very, very small allocation one time to self-custody Bitcoin. And that, as far as I know, is the first time that a union in the country has self-custodied Bitcoin. Others have purchased it, held it on their balance sheet, pension funds, et cetera, but not in this way.
When you guys went to make the decision, walk me through. Does it come up in a meeting? Somebody kind of makes a proposal. Is it just like a wild idea while you guys are out drinking one night? Like, how does the idea kind of first come up? And then what was the actual process when you described that you went, you actually underwrote what is the asset, what are the monetary properties, and what is the innovation?
So there's a really long story that I'll sum up quickly for the show. Long story short, I was first exposed to Bitcoin in 2011. Everyone has that story where they weren't like listening, and it's like, okay, so that's one. 2017, I actually worked at this conference and learned a ton about that. Kind of like the door got opened. Learned about Bitcoin, always understood the value of Bitcoin and what it meant, and that it was the first. Of course, the long road after that, and then had what I call like a re-orange pilling turn of events. And that's a long story, but basically I was working and we had a rescue at work of an analyst, and it was leading up to Pacific Bitcoin. And I was working that. And so we had this rescue of an individual from the Bitcoin community. And that kind of reopened my eyes and got me I say an upped dose of the orange pill. From there,
Wait, hold on. Describe
yeah.
when you say that you're rescuing a Bitcoiner. Describe kind of whatever detail you can in terms of like their house is on fire and you're like going into the house to actually pull them out of the house, and then you're sitting on the curb afterwards and they're like, "Hey, by the way, do you know about Bitcoin?" Or like, what happened?
So I was working with my crew at the beach at the time. It was the morning of like the FTX news had broke. So of course, being the Bitcoiner I already am, I'm coming in like, all right, what is going on in this? Like, all right, Bitcoin is down. Where it's not a question of like if, it's how and what's the move, and how much are we talking here? So as that happens, a call goes off, and it was for an individual who was hurt at the beach. And we go to the beach. There's an individual kind of holding their neck. They're just sitting there, and they had dove in the water. And for those that don't know, that aren't from the West Coast or East Coast, you have a sandbar that kind of goes like this. It dips down and then comes back up. So potentially this individual dove in what was deep water into a shallow area, hurt their neck. That's one of those calls where it seems like it's not a big deal. We packaged a person up. We're going en route. I like to make conversation. My crew, like unbelievable crew that we took the precautions, and we're going en route trying to make small talk. Turns out this person's an analyst for Swan. And we're talking, and I'm like, dude, I'm working. That you're an analyst. First of all, stop the ambulance, dude. Like, what's happening, right? Like where are we at, dude? And I'm like, I'm just kidding. We're laughing. Didn't stop the ambulance. But long story short, he ended up having a broken neck in two places. And when I ended up
Wow.
going to the conference, I was like, I thought, usually you go, hey, where's this guy at? But he'll be like, thanks for sending me to the hospital, dude. Ruined my day, and like, what a fiasco. Turned out he had a broken neck. And so that was just this crazy turn of events where I got a lot more just involved in at Pacific Bitcoin. Swan was very supportive and showed me tons of love on the journey. And that was kind of like my start of exploration much deeper into Bitcoin. And then naturally having 10 years on the labor board and finishing that my two passions of Bitcoin and labor unions started coming together, and I started exploring that intersection.
So
And that led to this with the Santa Monica firefighters.
got it. And so when you guys start to actually look at this, and the idea is proposed, do people think it's crazy, or are they open to it? Like, I know the firefighter community tends to kind of think a little bit differently, given there's firefighter podcast, blue collar podcast. There's, I think you guys have a podcast, and just they seem to be in and around these types of technologies or these types of movements. But what was the reaction when the idea first came up?
So having 10 years, I was the president of our union. So I know the system pretty well. I've navigated some challenging times and done everything that we can imagine in the books, right? So of course, when it comes to approaching a union, like I have a good background. What I saw in working through talking to other unions and figuring out how do you onboard unions and get them to learn about Bitcoin was there's a lot of barriers. Many you talk about on your show that we know. Fear, uncertainty, doubt, right? The things that have been publicized heavily is the drop from all-time highs to lows that gets publicized. Luna, FTX publicized, all this like fear type things. So I started looking like, how do you get folks on board the correct way, right? And Bitcoin was originally intended to be held in self-custody, right? It wasn't made. That was part of the beauty of the innovation is you can hold it yourself in your own wallet. You don't need a third-party custodian. That's very tough to do for a union to kind of go, oh, here's this thing I don't understand. Let's put a bunch of money in that. So the key that I kind of started seeing was, hey, I don't think any union has ever self-custodied Bitcoin. And what an amazing way to start the journey of learning by learning about the fundamentals of Bitcoin as a asset and a network. And so, I just approached the board, and there had been conversation, discussion on it, and that commitment was small enough to be like, let's just explore this thing in a very exploratory fashion. And then it kind of went to the membership, and the membership supported it. And that's how it happened.